UFP, the United Federation of Podcasts.
Stand by to receive our transmission.
You're listening to Star Trek Weekly News with Tony Robinson. In this week's news, Sonequa Martin-Green recaps Discovery Season 2. Number 1 has a name. And the famous words, engage, will be uttered again. All this and more coming right up. In the break between Seasons 1 and Season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, there was a Star Trek short movie which showed Discovery 1,000 years in the future. And now we've found out how that came to be. The second season finale of Star Trek Discovery jumped the show into a new time and place. In a couple of post-finale interviews, series star Sonequa Martin-Green talks about what this means for the show. As a guest on the Ready Room, and that's not the Trek FM Ready Room, but a totally different Ready Room, please don't ask, Sonequa Martin-Green spoke about the implications of Such Sweet Sorrow Part 2 and how it delivered on the promise they've been giving from the beginning that the show would find a way to fit into Star Trek canon. She said, "We have to have our relationship, us who are telling the story of Trek and those who are receiving it into their hearts. We have to have trust in this relationship. We were very different from the very beginning. We were going to be different in all these ways, and we needed the trust of the audience, and we have had such an overwhelmingly beautiful and positive response, which we're so grateful for. But part of it is the understanding that we are going to link up with the canon. We're exploring what we can in the 10 years before TOS, but we will link back up to the canon. And for a long time, we had to just tell people that, saying, trust us, we will answer all of these questions. So to have that last puzzle piece put into place, very happy to do that. It was a sort of, see you guys? She described watching the final scene on board the USS Enterprise and how that fulfilled this promise of canon sync. It was so palpable. Tears came to my eyes when I saw that moment, and I know everyone would be so happy to see that. It's such a gesture and a hug to the audience. Here we are, returning to what you remember. We are linking right back up with the canon, which is what we've always said we would do. Speaking to StarTrek.com, Martin-Green said more about this concept of syncing the show as it jumped forward onto a new era. Oh my gosh, all of the puzzle pieces fit together, I think, very beautifully and very comprehensively, very completely, courageously, yet respectfully. I appreciated how everything you've seen, especially over Season 2, but certainly over Season 1 as well, played a part. I love how all these story points came together, all of these people came together, and I love that it was ultimately to save all of sentient life and save the future. I love that even though we're going to do that, and we're going boldly where nobody has gone before, I mean, can you believe we're actually doing that? We're doing it as a family. We're going to land 950 years in the future as a real solidified and unified crew. On the Ready Room, the Michael Burnham actress talked about what the decision to jump the show into the future means for Discovery. It feels it is the most genius decision for Star Trek Discovery, she said. I'm so proud of our producers and writers for doing this, Alex Kurtzman and Michelle Paradise and Jenny Lumet, who did an amazing job writing the finale. Them and the other writers deciding to take us to the future. Now we get to tell our own stories because we're going boldly where no other Star Trek has gone before. But at the same time, we are still who we are. We are still connected to the canon in the way that we are. We cannot help where we started. We cannot help that I am in the family of Sarek and Amanda and Spock. We will always have that, but now we can take who we are to this future we've never seen before and tell our story and see what the future holds and what has happened with everyone. I just could not believe what an awesome choice it was. I'm beaming with pride because I thought it was the perfect thing for us. Martin-Green later reiterated that where the show is going is a totally new place and time. Clearly, we are in the future, and we are in a space that none of us have seen before, literally in a space that no one has seen before, and telling our own stories. I think it's going to be dope. She also talked about how these changes mean that they're given more of a blank slate when it comes to Star Trek canon. There have certainly been things we've contributed to the canon, and every time that happens on set we say, oh my gosh, this is about to become canon, let's make sure it's perfect. But now everything will be canon. Every single thing we do will be canon because we have never seen this future. It is the epitome of innovation, which is the very spirit of Star Trek. So we are honoured to do this. In her interview with StarTrek.com, Martin-Green talked about what she hopes to see for the character of Michael in Season 3. Well, in a perfect world, I'm hoping for a balance. That very same balance we saw Spock find, that Saru's trying to find, that all the other characters are trying to find. I'm very excited for it because when you pick up with Michael Burnham, this Vulcan human, I have this image I've built up and it's made of diamonds. It's almost impenetrable. These defenses I've put up as I've been overcompensating and seeking absolution. I'm being driven by shame and guilt and needing to prove myself. That's where you picked up with me at the beginning of this show. So what I love is that you see this outpouring of emotion in Season 2 because the pendulum has swung the other way. Now I've really connected with my humanity like never before. Now it's time for us to swing and swing and swing and swing until it gets to the middle and we find this balance. That balance is something I'm going to be working on for some time to come, and that's what I'm really excited to find. I'm excited for the freedom that is to come for Michael Burnham, as well now that I'm not driven by shame. All these things have been plucked out and uprooted, so now I have the freedom to be who I am. One of the consequences of the time jump for the show was leaving a number of characters behind. Martin-Green talked about the tearful goodbyes this involved. We say goodbye to a lot of people. Of course, we have to say goodbye to Anson and Ethan, who are Pike and Spock, because we had to link back up with TOS. But then we had to say goodbye to a lot of people we started out with. Mary Chifo, Shazad Latif, Mia Kirshner, James Frayne, people who were there from the very beginning. We had to say goodbye to Jane Brooke, who was Admiral Cornwell. Also Alan Van Sprang, who was Leland. Also Hannah Spear, Sirana, whose character was able to rise up in that way. And those last moments with Liam Hughes, young Spock and Arista, young Michael as well. There were many goodbyes. I could cry talking about it now. We were leaving all these people who have made such a contribution to our show, and it was very, very sad. You can watch the full video where Martin-Green goes into detail on the shooting of the finale, the epic development, the Red Angel suit, feeling like a superhero, and the cast coming together as a family, and more. The Ready Room, episode 13, is available on the trekmovie.com website. Well, she was number 1, but she had a name. Star Trek has finally given a name to one of its first Starfleet officers. Number 1 was Captain Christopher Pike's first officer aboard the Enterprise in the original Star Trek pilot The Cage. She was played by Majel Barrett, Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry's future wife. but the character was removed from the series when changes were made for the show's second pilot. Pike was replaced by James Kirk as the ship's captain. Spock became the first officer. Barrett was recast as Nurse Chapel, and Number 1 disappeared. Number 1 has long been referred to as Number 1 because the cage never mentions her name. Her name may have come up in later episodes of the series, if not for the changes going into the second pilot, but because this was her only appearance for 50 years, besides the menagerie which repurposed footage from the cage, her lack of a name is a kind of a legend in Star Trek fandom. Number 1 returned to action in Star Trek Discovery's second season as replayed by Rebecca Romijn. She was aboard the Enterprise when it and the Discovery battled Section 31's fleet. She was deposed by Starfleet intelligence after the battle and stuck to the story that she, Pike, Spock and Ash Tyler agreed upon, that Discovery was destroyed and its crew did not survive. At one point during all of this, Number 1 finally reveals her first name, Una. As the Star Trek Wiki Memory Alpha points out, Una is a Swedish name, but it's also the feminine form of the Spanish word uno, meaning one. That's clever stuff, but the name has another origin. Though Number 1's appearances in official Star Trek canon have been few and far between, she has continued to appear in Star Trek Apocrypha, including several novels. There have been a handful of explanations for her being referred to as Number 1 instead of by name, including that she's an alien with a name too long to pronounce. But in the novel Captain to Captain, writer Greg Cox gave her the name Una. On Twitter, following the episode, fellow Star Trek author David Mack revealed that he suggested the name Una to Cox as a way to honour another Star Trek author, Una McCormack. Cox, Mack and fellow novelists Kevin Dillmore and Dayton Ward continued to use the name in other novels. Number 1 is called Una in Mack's Star Trek Discovery novel Desperate Hours, in order to further solidify it in expanded Star Trek canon, and it seems they did a good enough job of that the producers of Discovery noted it and chose to run with it. This isn't the first time that a Star Trek novel has named a Star Trek character. Before the TV shows and movies got round to it, Mr. Sulu is referred to only as Sulu in Star Trek, the original series. Novelist Vonda McIntyre revealed his first name to be Hikaru in the novel The Entropy Effect, and it was later accepted into Star Trek canon. What do you think of Number 1 finally getting a name? Well, let us know here at Star Trek Weekly News. Drop us an email and let's have your comments. We'll read them out. Will we ever hear the word engage again from a certain Jean-Luc Picard? Well, the next Star Trek series is ready to engage. Production officially begins today, April 22nd, on the CBS All Access, but still untitled Star Trek series featuring Patrick Stewart's return to the role of Jean-Luc Picard. Writer-producer Michael Chabon shared a photo from the set and announced that today is the first day of production on the untitled Picard project. In addition to Stewart, the new Star Trek series also stars Alison Pill, Harry Treadaway, Isa Briones, Ivan Ivagora, Santiago Cabrera, and Michelle Hurd. The Picard series is filming in California. The show is set decades after fans last saw Picard in the film Star Trek Nemesis. The first 2 episodes of the Picard series will be directed by Hanelle Culpepper, making her the first woman to helm the launch of a new Star Trek series in the franchise's 53-year history. Stewart's The Next Generation co-star Jonathan Frakes will direct the 3rd and 4th episodes. Culpepper made her Star Trek debut directing the episode Vaulting Ambition in Star Trek Discovery's first season. Hanelle is a gifted and dynamic filmmaker whose directorial choices are always deeply rooted in character. Alex Kurtzman, Discovery's co-creator, executive producer and showrunner, said when Culpepper's involvement with Picard was announced, "I've been a fan of her work since she started with us on Discovery, and she's the perfect person to reintroduce the beloved character of Picard to longtime fans and new viewers alike.